So any doubts up till now? In our last class, we were talking about enterprise level softwares, solution architecture. We also talked about some basics of what basically the software architecture is. We soon will look into the design part. So any doubts up till now? In the meantime, everyone joins. We can have a discussion on any of the topics which you need some more discussion. Some of you had doubts in solution architecture as well. In our last class we were talking about solution architecture, yes or no? I hope you people are with me. Any doubts?
Yeah, sir, no, sir, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, if we look into the digital trend, right, where we observe things getting digitized, things moving towards cloud. In fact, the cloud computing can be a very correct term. And then we have like uh, SOAs, right? What are SOAs?
Sir, service oriented architecture, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. Service-oriented architecture and service-oriented applications, and we also use it as software quality assurance. So don't get confused when we are using this thing. So most of the time, I'll be giving you the context in which you know we are using this particular term, right? In some places, you'll also find it as uh, service-oriented application as well. Right. Yeah. So because these things are taking towards some new opportunities, right? Salesforce can be a very good example, and but these things are also adding to the complexity of our digital system as well. And when we are not getting the correct solution, right, then it becomes very tough for, especially for the enterprise level applications, to provide some satisfactory results. And it may lead to some creation of some unwanted problems as well. So for any launch of any digital project, we need to have some guidelines that can align with the business interest. And for that, what we have is we have just a second, some technical issues. Oh, it has. Just a second, folks. Some technical glitches application. Yeah, I think I. Yeah, sorry. So this thing leads to what we have is the solution architecture, and this is where your solution architecture comes into play. So basically, this is nothing but the architectural description for a specific solution, I would say, and which is based on some predefined processes. Along with predefined processes, since we have like some processes which are predefined, so definitely we'll also focus on some best practices as well. So as an initial step for like creating some new enterprise solution, we try to ensure that every solution will be meeting the business requirements, and that would fit into the overall enterprise architecture as a whole as well. Right. So basically, in simpler terms, what I'm trying to say is that this solution architecture uh, provides the ground for your software development projects, and it can tailor the IT solutions to specific business needs, and by defining the functional requirements, and by defining your stages of development as well. Right. So by defining functional requirements, by defining the stages of development. So it is, you can say, is comprised of many sub processes that can give some guidance from various enterprise architecture viewpoints as well. So to but better understand the role of solution architecture, what we need to do is that we need to think about your solution first, right? Because this is something which is a core, right? So a solution is like a way to describe an answer to a problem, right? In day to day life, we say, right, everything has a solution, right? So for any problem, I have an answer that is nothing but the solution. And especially specifically in the corporate world, what we are trying to say is that we are evaluating the client needs or problems, and then we are addressing them with systems that replace or improve the existing system. In your solution architecture, the client needs are basically expanded, right? So I have my client needs. These client needs are expanded to the business needs. We got the client need, from there we got to know about the business needs that in one way or the other are related to some technology, right? So these needs basically crystallize uh, through some reassessing the existing systems, and we try to find out how it benefits, or in some cases it may harm also the organization in case of longer run. So we need to assess those parts as well, and sometimes these evaluations are uh, run by your business analysts. And these business analysts also provide a definition of the problem, and then some solution architects take this problem and start coming up with some description of the solution, right? That's the solution architecture which we are talking about. And then this solution architecture basically translates your technical business needs. That means the technical business needs are transformed into some practical IT solutions. And that's why we are giving this term, right, as the IT solution. Now, uh, this will also help us in establishing some rules and maybe some instructions for some proper implementation and its delivery part as well. Now, this will also consider like all the external factors that could have an impact on the development process, and we'll have some digital projects which are less likely to fail, and there will be a consensus between your teams and all, whether it is like quality analyst team or whether it is development team. So both these teams will take a call on it. So your, in some sense, your software architecture can become a support system that would provide the structure, and that would reduce the scope of complexity when we are developing a system and when we are rolling out the new system or the developed system, right? So what we have is, the next thing which we have is, like, we have, as we said, we have something called as your solution architect, right? So this solution architect will definitely have some rules, and this uh, solution architect will be defining the role of a solution architect, because just like within the field of enterprise architecture, there is a level of abstraction, and then what we have is, like, if there is an abstraction, right, so then sometimes we may find it problematic to grasp from uh, the non technical perspective, non-technical perspective. And it can become very dangerous to assume that if I'll hire an enterprise architect, then that architect will be able to delegate the tasks to the development teams, and we can cut the middleman, right? So obviously, in case of solution architect, the things will be implemented correctly, right? So the role of this solution architect will be like, I need, because I need to have, at the end, I need to complete a particular project, right? So this solution architect will be working closely with technical architects, right? What this technical architect is and what the technical architecture is, maybe next few slides we are going to discuss about the same thing. So this technical architect, and will be obviously sorry. Yeah. So the solution architect will be working very closely with your technical architect, and will be managing the tasks that are required for the project. Now, basically, this involves overseeing some time schedules, and monitoring the technical skills, and then taking care of risks, and then ensuring that all the activity aligns with the business requirements which are described in the solution. So the role of solution architect can be compared to your technical project manager in some sense. And who will be keeping track of the project throughout all the phases. So basically, in some sense, ideally, your solution architect should have technical skills, and along with the, I'm talking about skills, what a solution architect should have. So technical skills, along with the, this person should have some past architecture experience as well. Right. And there is a rationale behind it, because solution architect will be the link between your business strategy and IT operations, because we have already talked about this in case of solution architecture. So, you know, then this person need to have an understanding of an organizational architectural environment as well as your real life technical solutions. So in their role, they need to establish credibility with like both the business leaders and the IT experts. That's why good communication with the non-technical and highly technical audience is the key. So any by the way, any doubts up till now? Any doubts up till now?
So we are saying that solution architect manages the complete project, like.
Not the complete project, but will be a part of it, because as I said, he is somewhat similar to your technical manager, right? So
Yes,
in
sir.
that case, your project technical manager is also a part of the entire project, right? And he'll be keeping the track of all the projects throughout all the phases. So obviously, involvement will be there. All the phases means wherever some solution is required. It's not like during the deployment phase also my solution architect is available for the same,
Yes, sir.
right? Any other doubts? No? Okay. Now let's quickly talk about the benefits of this solution architecture, and then we will switch to the next architecture. Right. So what we have is we have uh, you know some specific solution architecture benefits as well, and one is your business goals, right? So while curating some or maybe in an attempt to come up with some perfect solution for a problem, the solution architect will not only focus on the technology section, but will also talk about the needs of the stakeholders. And with the help of solution architecture, your best practices, right? We're talking about best practices. Uh, and then we can have some business goals, which can be translated into a realistic technical vision, right? And these things can be carried out in a very short span of time. So business goals will be, very clear and will be achievable. Then we have like target date, or the delivery date, or the deployment date, right? So because since your solution architect have like extensive IT knowledge and can manage the development team as well, so they can also work with business teams and customers as well, so that would ensure that your overall solution aligns with the business objective and is on track within the launching schedule as well. Then we have like technology. In fact, this is a very important one. Technology value and the requirement. Right. So your solution architect will have a direct impact on the return on investment. He's going to keep up with the newest technology and the current market trends, and he can decide which project a company should adopt in order to achieve some sustainable growth, and with obviously keeping the comfort of the team in mind. Then we have like increased ROI. Okay. What do you mean by in ROI?
Return on investment.
Right. Very correct. You know, from the term from the finance, but yeah, everywhere we see, we have to look for what is a return on investment, right? In day-to-day life, it's like even if suppose let's say you are investing something, right? So you look for what is basically the return on investment. So, with solution architecture, a person can measure, or the entire organization can measure the in that too in actual numbers, right? How successful a project is. That's because your solution architecture will not only think about the best solution in terms of your performance, but also in terms of cost, What was the last point?
Sir, increased return on investment.
Oh my God. Uh, I guess some technical issues, and that has resulted into, this thing. Okay, anyways, no worries, no worries. So, what we were saying was, in case of uh, increased return on investment, was my screen also not visible?
Yes, sir. I think you were disconnected.
Okay, from this, I guess I was connected with one device and got disconnected with the other one. Okay, anyways, no worries. Yeah. So, increased return on investment means that since we have, a full-time guy who is going to talk about, uh, you know, the correct method, and then someone is going to talk about the correct steps, right? So, in that case, what we can do is that we'll be able to, take a call on these stuff easily, that yes, with the help of this solution architecture, I am in a position to measure the actual number required for actual number in terms of, people, resources, in terms of successfully completing a project, right? All because I have a solution architect who will not only think about the best solution, uh, in terms of your performance, but also in terms of cost. Because see, we are hiring a separate person, right? So I'm expecting to get something in return, right? And then we have like market opportunities, right? And in this, what we have is like the your IT world changes rapidly, right? Every now and then you will find some new innovations flooding the market every day, every week, every month, every year, right? And in order to propose some adequate solutions for any given problem, your solution architect needs to continuously evaluate the latest trends. Right. So in that way, we can back up and promote some new products as well. So there I have given an example of your UI UX part. Right. In this, what we have is like, I took an example of Cred, where an app is, so effective that it's rated very high in terms of your user interface, right? Not only Cred, right? Many other apps where they keep on changing, or they keep on working on UI UX. Lot amount of focus is there on user interface, just to retain the uh, users, right? Because that only will generate business. For example, I would give you another example. When many of these companies saw your TikTok becoming popular, right? Then your Instagram, that means from the Meta side, Facebook side, they introduced this Reels concept, right? Because which was similar to exactly what TikTok was doing. Then similarly, YouTube saw, that means Google saw this, or Alphabet saw this thing, and they immediately came up with the concept of shorts, and within a very short span of time, both this reels and shorts became very popular. Yes or no? I hope you might have observed these changes.
Yes, sir.
Probably TikTok is no longer available in our country, but still it is very popular in some of the countries. But yes, uh, the other companies also found a very good business opportunity, right? So slowly, what they, if I mean, many of you might be going through reels on daily basis or shorts. So initially, it was like, you know simply short videos. These days, what you get is between two, three, or four reels or shorts. You'll get a small short or reel, which is nothing but an ad. Right? So that kind of business strategy they have come up with. Then we we have budget and resourcing, right? So in this case, your architectural description will have uh, some clear information on the overall cost of the project and the number of resources which are needed for various phases or stages. So this would help uh, an organization or part of an organization who is working for a specific project to better budget their digital transformations, and one can avoid some costly surprises all of a sudden which pops up. Then we have your project timeline. So unexpected costs basically arise when a project takes much longer to implement than what we expected. But since we have a solution architecture which determines the effort plus the resources that are needed for project, so this would ultimately help us in defining the project timeline from start to scratch, right? So this was, in some sense, all about your solution architecture. So it's like in every, uh, any project which you're going to handle, your solution architecture will be a very important link between your IT strategy of a business and the successful implementation of the solution which we are giving, technical solution. So by looking at a specific problem, your solution architects basically conceptualize based on some rationales the best possible solution, while considering all your functional and your non-functional attributes or requirements into account. So the solution architect will formulate some clear guidelines that would help you in managing some technical teams, and then the outline of the development stages, and so on and so forth. So this was all about your solution architecture. So any doubts in this? Any doubts in this? I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, fine. Now, next, see, I gave you a very good list of list available architectures, but we said that we'll cover some important ones, right? So next one is your solution architecture, right? I have solution architecture. Sorry. Solution we have already covered. We have logical architecture. Yeah. So in case of your logical architecture, this is considered as a type of structural design that can be used to provide a detailed description of the system, and with that too without defining the system technology or environment. And this would include all the information related to logically and the detailed description without using any technical terms, and can be considered as a diagram to define the relation between your software components. Yeah, right. See, when we'll study 4 plus 1 view architecture, we'll also talk about physical and logical architecture once again. So the main purpose, because that this thing is a part of it, a part of 4 plus 1 view architecture. And so the main purpose of designing the logical architecture is to plan for the system and use it for communication before designing and before implementing the system. So what we have is we have various tiers. In case of logical architecture, what we have is we have Just a second. We are talking about your logical architecture, and we have various tiers associated with it. So, what all options I have? I have a client tier, and then I have an access tier, then I have a presentation tier, I have a business service tier, and then I have a data tier. Right. So, in this side, what can on the client side, I'll have browsers and browsers on desktops or handheld devices and so on and so forth. Here, I can have some gateways and some proxies in case of access tiers. In presentation, I can have the application server. I can have some portal server. In case of business tiers, I can have the some message queues and all those business logics will be added. And in case of data tier, I'll have database. So what we can have is that your logical architecture can be defined as the organization of the subsystems, your software classes, and the layers that can make the complete logical system. So your components are placed randomly in the system, and that's why it is called your logical architecture. So the components can be deployed in physical computers and operating systems and can be used by the network. The system basically can be logical. As I said, logical decomposition would be there, and that you will study in as 4 plus 1 architecture as well. So the system is decomposed into some smaller logical components that basically directly interact with the system to meet the system requirements. And the logical components are the components that are the abstraction of the physical components, which means they can be used to perform some complete system functionality while taking care of the system constraints. So an example of your logical component can be some any user interface that is used by a web browser, and your logical architecture will act as an intermediate between your physical architecture and your black box, because I'm not going into the technical details. Right, anyway. In case of architecture, we most of the time we don't go into technical details. So the logical architecture acts as the intermediate between physical and your black box, which is your technical details. And your logical architecture will be created in order to define the interaction of operation between the systems. And your block diagram will be used to represent the logical architecture. Block diagram means the logical decomposed diagram, right? Where we'll have various components. And this logical architecture is considered the basic architecture for the system, covering all basic details regarding the system. And it includes your complete information about the system as well. So your logical architecture, as I said, will be decomposed for different tiers, and then we'll have various components of it. Components means the things which we saw just now. Your client tier, your access tier, your presentation tier, business service tier, and your data tier. Right. So when the logical architecture diagram is created, so it is developed with much more focused and much more concerned attitude to a physical architecture, as this becomes your first step for designing the entire system. And if suppose there is any relative error which is present in the system, so that error can create problems in implementation part, And then there will be, overall, because it's like we have some bug resulted into some failure, right? So for the entire system there will be a trouble. So for a system, if suppose there is a common tier architecture, we can have, like, let's say I have a 3 tier, then I'll work on some request response cycle. If suppose I have 2 tier, I have a direct request acknowledgement cycle. So your user basically will be using the presentation tier, and that would uh, presentation tier will be somewhere here, right? And then this will be generating some requests. This will be going to the application layer, and further processing will be done. Obviously we'll be dealing with this data part, because data will be fetched, right? Some modifications, updations will be done if required. That means some manipulations if required, or even if suppose simply in order to give some access also, then also some amount of verification takes place. So your response is created by your application tier and transferred to your presentation tier. So for creating your logical architecture, I have like various components, right? Various components means the client tier. So this consists of applications, right? And these applications will be used by the users for accessing the portal services. And with the help of this tier only, the user will be able to use the application and fulfill his or her requirements. And the type of client tier is like, you can have your browser, or maybe any Java client if suppose it's a desktop app, and that helps the user to gain access to the application. In case of your access tier, basically user will be able to gain the access to the organization network from any location. So the user obviously will be using the internet services, and will enter into the organization system and will use the system services. The access tier basically is in between your presentation tier and the client tier, right? It's in between, and this acts as an intermediate for the communication between these two tiers. So there is a requirement of a secure server. Sorry, there is a requirement of a secure server, and that would allow only the valid users and the authorized users who can use this entire system. Next one is a presentation tier. So this tier helps basically, this one, and this tier helps to provide access to the users to use the system and gain some important information, and then once again fulfill the requirements. So your presentation tier presents the response generated by the application tier, right? And it presents the result to the user. This tier is also capable of knowledge management. It is also capable of content management. It is also capable of community management and collaboration management as well. So the portal server type software issued for implementation is for this presentation tier. Next one is your business tier. Sorry. Business tier, right? Okay, got so your business service tier will be responsible for handling the backend of the system and handling the mechanism that is used for presenting the result on the presentation tier. All the processing and main development work will reside in this tier. Right. Processing will take place. And your business tier will also contain the application components that are deployed in the application server and your web server. So basically, your business tier will contain numerous applications like your ERP and email system, calendar service, and so on and so forth. Last one is your data tier. So the data tier is basically used as the storage tier by your business service tier. And this data is stored that your presentation tier can further use it to present the result to the user, right? And this can be displayed. Right. So basically your logical architecture is like a type of diagram used for designing the system and the various components of the system. So through this architecture, we get some detailed information, and the system, as I said once again, does not contain and does not transfer any technical details, but only the logical architecture of the entire system. So, any doubts in this logical architecture?
So here integration is a part of logics, or it will not be a part of logics.
No, integration. Why we need?
So like here we are talking that access tier will be in between client tier and presentation
Yeah.
tier.
So this is required. No, integration. We don't have to talk about integration. In fact, because I need to have this right, because client cannot directly deal with the presentation or cannot directly deal with data tier. Recall our software engineering classes where we were talking about DFDs. There also we used to say that your actor will not directly deal with data stores. There needs to be a process in between.
Yes, sir.
Right. I hope, yes. If you're able to connect this particular point, the things will be clear. See, I'll tell you in simple words, this logical architecture, as I said, will be used in 4 plus 1 view architecture as well. Whenever we are talking about logical architecture, we are dealing with logical decomposition of the system. Logical decomposition of the system means decomposing the system into the meaningful components. I like there also I'll explain with some more examples with normally I should not take any coding example, but I'll explain in that way also, because if suppose I have a small program, or maybe let's take our university MIS. So what we do is I have a component which is hostel management. I have a component which is inventory management. I have a component which is marking, grading, transcript generation component, and these will be interacting in some or the other way, right? I'm just simply randomly connecting the dots, but based on some logics, these will be interacting, these components, right? I'll have one hostel management also. I have one registration management. Registration management will be in touch with, let's say, hostel management plus inventory management plus marking, grading, Yeah. So probably this time I was able to catch when this thing error took place. There was internet connectivity issue for a second. I don't know why it happened in our office. Normally, in our offices, this thing doesn't happen. Anyways, so we were talking about where we missed the point. Rahul, what was the last
So,
point?
so can you present the screen?
Oh, sorry. Actually, I'm online with two devices, and all of a sudden, both these devices. Uh, both these devices uh, go offline. Mm, yeah,
Sir, you were giving the example of MIS and these connections.
yeah. So yeah, okay, fine. Let me once again add this point. Okay. So I was giving a simple example, which I said I'll give you the example in much more detailed discussion when we'll talk about 4+1 view architecture. So what we can have is, we let's say I have one university MIS. So it can be, a university MIS. It can be decomposed into, let's say, hostel management, your inventory management, your marking, grading, transcript generation, your payroll system, your attendance management, and so on and so forth. So, right? So logically, a system has been decomposed into it, and this is logical, physical. There is another view where you'll find all these components are interacting with each other. How these things are interacting, we'll discuss when we'll talk about 4+1 view architecture. Right. So, any doubt in this?
Sir, if we take an example of our university MIS,
Yeah.
then we can say that the client tier will be the browser that we are using, and the access tier will be the server of LNMIT, and the presentation tier will be the services that are presenting that are giving the responses,
Yeah.
and business service,
Yeah. Logically, we are decomposing it. Yes.
and the data tier will be the database.
Yes.
So, sir, in this logical architecture, we just define that what are the applications and services we have to use in
Yes.
these tiers.
Yeah. And no technical details. We haven't talked about any technical details, right? Simple logical
Yes, sir.
execution. Right. Simple. Another one is your application tier. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why today internet is mm, there is a disruption in internet connectivity. That too, I'm sitting in office. I don't know why it is happening. Maybe some reasons. Anyways, come back to this. So what I was saying, that in some of the literatures you'll find this logical architecture is divided into, uh, instead of 5 layers, it is divided into three. One is your presentation tier, another one is your application tier, and the last one is your data tier. So what we get here is that in from the presentation tier, a user requests, right? And there from the application, a query goes. From the data tier, data is passed on to the application tier, and from application tier, we are getting the application response. Right. So presentation tier will be, in some sense, will be a web server. Application tier will be your, sorry, presentation tier will be your browser. Application tier will be your web server, and the data tier will be the backend data. Right. That's how we divide it. And in some other literatures, it is given into these three parts only. Now, next one is your technology architecture. Or yeah, we'll start this in the next class. Let's now take some questions now on the topics which we have covered just now. Any doubts up till now? Any doubts? No? Okay, fine. Then we are good for today, and soon I'll share one assignment with you guys as well, and then we'll be meeting on Tuesday. See you then. Bye.